Welcome to Locker Pod episode number 80. With Daily Sports Science. Got Mark Doran, Clare Senior Football Coach 2023 with us tonight. Daniel St. Ledger. Daniel's been on before, so is Mark as well. Daniel manages St. Sylvester's Dublin. So you're very welcome, lads. We're going to take a look at the quarterfinals tonight. Not going to waste any time. I'm going to fly straight into it. Just a wee bit of an observation here, Mark, before with Tyrone, it obviously you're involved with Clare this year. I'm just looking there, he's come up against Dublin and Derry and Cork and Monaghan and Kerry. So you should have plenty of insights for us tonight here, even from a tactical point of view of those teams. But lads, starting with Dublin Mayo, probably people on paper would say that's the big one, repeat of those sort of epic games of 2016 and 17 and the likes of that put us through some seriously brilliant encounters. Two different teams, two different management teams. Daniel, you're obviously coaching in Dublin, and you probably have a bit of a ear to the ground as regards Dublin club football and the ins and outs of Dublin football. But just looking at the Dublin team here, Daniel, the last day, obviously their defence, McFitz, Merchant, Brian Hard, Small, obviously Darren Newcomb's quite a newcomer. Lee Gannon has been in the panel for a few years. Fenton McCarthy, Scully, Bulger, Baskell, Paddy Small, Con Kilkenny. Still a lot of household names. Still a strong side. What's your views on them?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny. A lot of people up around here are saying it's the draw they wanted, but I think there's nervousness around Mayo, around Dublin about Mayo, purely because Mayo are just almost unanalyzable at this stage. It's like, I think Dublin are a fairly known quantity. Obviously, Mark would have known from playing them in the league this year, like what they're about, and they've been doing the same things with kind of the same set panel more or less for most of the league and for the Leinster Championship, the pre-season competition we call it. But it's been, I think it's going to be an awkward setup for Dublin, to be honest with you, because Mayo had been kind of sticking to their guns at Conor Loftus at 6. They had O'Shea fairly rigidly inside, and then kind of next day tore up the script pretty much before Galway in kind of typical sort of Mayo fashion. It almost doesn't really make sense to kind of to be sticking to playing the way you have been for so long, and then when the shit hits the fan, kind of the pressure comes on, they almost go back to something James Horan-esque, which was, and he like even Doherty coming in as the sweeper and ending up on Comer a couple of times. Like there's a certain amount of madness, and that's not news to anyone, but there's a certain amount of madness with Mayo that I think Dublin will find extremely tricky, because like for most of the year this year, Dublin have been dropping off an awful lot of kickouts. They've been kind of setting up around the 65, kind of full defense, that sort of stuff. And I don't know, it's Mayo could run into severe difficulty with that, but equally they could also blow them out of the water at the same time if they're getting 70, 80, 90% of possession from kickouts. I think Dublin are at their best when they're squeezing kickouts fairly high. I mean, I know it's a different kind of element with the Leinster final with Louth, but like that 15 minutes where they put a high squeeze on Louth and scored whatever it was, 1-8 or 1-9 in that time. Yeah, that's when Dublin are at their best. I think that'll be the win and the losing of it, probably. I think if Dublin kind of go aggressively at Mayo, I think it might suit a little bit better. Like there's an element that might, in your head, you might be thinking, well, maybe if Dublin take the sting out of it and play with control, tempo, and that kind of stuff, and I just don't think it suits them. I think they're better playing on the front foot, But there's definitely a nervousness. I think there's a nervousness around Dublin about Mayo.
Yeah, and Cork, Mark, they went after Mayo's kick out late in that game, the game that ultimately actually put Mayo into this position of having to go to Salt Hill and win last week. And Colin Reap went under a fair degree of pressure. Now, Cork have probably been one of the most impressive teams on the kick out press that I've seen anyway in the last number of games. They're really, really aggressive. But from a Mayo perspective, would you agree with Daniel there, Mark, from Dublin's point of view? Have you seen anything different? Obviously, you come up against them this year now. I know it was earlier in the year, but have you seen anything that would make you think, that they're going to win this game this weekend?
Yeah, look, it's probably, when you think about it, I would say there's serious pressure on Dublin this weekend. They make no mistake. I don't think it's a draw. I think if they were handpicked it, they wouldn't have wanted Mayo just yet. Yeah. But you think Stephen Cluxton came back in the Dublin panels, Paul Mannion, Jack McCaffrey, all the people came back in. Look, they only came back for one reason. It was probably because Kerry, there's a kick of a ball they felt with them and Kerry last year. So make no mistake, them boys came back, and I've no doubt Pat Gilroy had a big influence in getting them back, was thinking we're so close to winning that iron. Now, I would say the thought, as Daniel said there, maybe the nervousness or playing Mayo, this is a real test. I think Dublin's only played one Division 1 team this year.
Yeah,
it was Roscommon. Mayo, played in Division 1. They've had 3 championship games with Division 1 teams, and that will be a big stand. And plus, when you think, like, Mayo, even though, right, they were beat, they're in Cork, but they've been tested. I'm not sure Dublin, well, people say Roscommon maybe testing, but I still think when Dublin played Roscommon that day, they were in second or third gear into the last 5 or 6 minutes. And then they cranked up through the gears and they got themselves a draw and probably should have won the game. So that way, I think Dublin's very untested. I'm just interested to see their team, what team they put out. But I think there's serious pressure. Look, make no mistake, I think if Dublin's beat, that's probably the end of Desi Farrell.
Yeah.
It's probably the end of Stephen Cluxon, Manya and Jack McCaffrey. Will just be, and maybe a few more. So in that regards, I think there's massive pressure in Dublin now. I do, if Desi Farrell, not no doubt this week, will watch the way Cork went after Mayo's kick-outs, and even the way Galway done a serious job for 40 minutes. Even in the whole most of the game, Galway had serious joy on their own kick-out and the Mayo kick-out. So look, I don't think Dublin, even though in times I have been dropping off bar the live game and they went in a massive press, but I think Dublin will really go hard at Mayo just in the kick-out. The analyze, the analyze goes in now the kick-outs, but if you're thinking, like, when Mayo, but funny enough, I was just watching the wee clips of it the other day. I think it was 2021. Remember Dublin last played Mayo.
That's
They
right.
were beating them out to get 10-4 at half time. Should have been 13-4. End up Mayo brought it back to a draw, and then Mayo nipped them in extra time. And just watching the game, like you watch Mayo again Cork this year. Remember, Mayo seemed to struggle again a real structured defensive system. Even you think of Louth, somebody that's really structured, and even I think Mayo love playing a game when it's near chaos. It's a carnival. It's man on man. It brings out the best of them. And I think Dublin won't want to go down that route, especially early on. And I know people say, oh, Dublin's great in the front foot, but Dublin's probably the one team I think can play it any way you want to play it. Whereas I think it doesn't suit Mayo to play again a real structured like maybe a game of inches, whereas because I just think Mayo, the best of Mayo is when it comes to that chaos. It's nearly back to that James Horn or Stephen Rochford. It's chaos. We just go for it. I do believe Mayo are far better when they go for it. But even if you think back to the game last week against Galway, half time, first half they were just very cagey. It didn't suit them, but the second half they just came out the shackles off. And they just go for it. And then there's one thing that does bring out the best in Mayo is probably the Dubs, state of the Dubs jersey. But I do think, even though I'm saying I'll be very nervous in Dublin, but I just think Dublin now have been bubbling along. And even they're sitting, it's very hard for Mayo. They had a tough game last week. Yes, we don't think there's too many injuries, but that tough game 7 days later on a Sunday night, to hearing the draw on Monday morning, you can say this and you feel like yourself when you're up on a high, to get back down, to get back up again in 7 days. It's very, very hard. And for that, I just think the Dubs will beat them now. But I think if the Dubs tactically simply will go and try to play a real, if they'll watch the levels they analyze and play a structured defensive system, make it tight, won't want the game stretched. I think if it's stretched and it suits me, it suits the Mayos, the McBride, McLaughlin, these boys coming in, Tommy Conroy, the pace, and that. Where Dublin, I don't think they'll want to do that. But again, a lot depends. Like, you couldn't predict Mayo starting 15 at the minute.
No,
you probably couldn't. And you couldn't say there's Dublin starting 15. But I do think that week, Dublin sitting a week, and yes, there'll be the nerves and all. Yes, a lot of pressure on them. And there's serious pressure on the Dublin management team, where maybe Kevin McStay, new management team, he's nowhere near under the same pressure as what Desi Farrell isn't. So there's probably I think it's a bigger game for Dublin. There's a lot more riding on it for Dublin, and a lot more at their players. And I do think when it comes to the bit, I think Dublin will just have a wee bit too much. But look, it's one game you can't wait to watch because you don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly. Well, 323 to 98. Dublin beat Sligo. Mayo have come through, titanic tussles against Louth, as you say, Mark. Obviously lost narrowly away to Cork, went to Salt Hill with a lot of pressure on them last Sunday, obviously, and dug out a 13-12 win. Daniel, from a coaching perspective, where would you prefer to be? Obviously coming in with a 2-week rest, with a bit of work being done, or coming in with those hardened games under your belt, where would you rather be?
Yeah, it's a bit of it's a punch in the nose or kicking the balls. Like neither are kind of ideal. Like, I mean, I still am very nervous from a Dublin point of view that there's, as Mark said, there's been no test. There's really been no test, and I don't think Roscommon really was a test either. Kildare wasn't a test. That was sloppiness from Dublin. And when they came up against anyone with half of a plan, they struggled to get up through the gears.
Yeah.
From Mayo's point of view, like. Yeah, physically, yes, it's a tough gig coming from that Galway game, because that was attritional. There was a lot of off the ball stuff. There was as we've seen floating around on social media, but it was a heavy hitting game. I'd probably prefer to be in Mayo camp. I like coming up with a lot of, as we said, like a lot of tests under their belt. They've gone to the well a couple of times, and that suits Mayo. I think that hardship suits them. They love the misery of the whole thing almost, and to be honest with you, I think Dublin could be a bit of a sitting duck. And like I agree with Mark. I think they will play structured and organized and defensively, but I think it's not in keeping with some of their players' natural inclinations. I think they have a couple of hounds who just want to get up and down the field and want to go and tackle and go and make contact. Like, you look at Lee Gannon, look at Bugler, like even in the forward line, the Basquez, O'Dell, depending who plays, they're a very different sort of team than what Dublin were maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and they're different sort of individuals. So it'll be interesting, but I just have a sneaky suspicion Mayo could come all guns blazing, and if they can keep a foothold, until half time, and kind of that energy that the crowd tends to give them, if they can keep in the game, I would just a sneaky little suspicion for Mayo.
Yeah, I'm interested as to hear your opinion, or we'll just give you a quick opinion before we call a winner. In 2012, Jim McGuinness said he studied hours and hours and hours of footage of Stephen Cluxton's kickouts, couldn't see a pattern, that many different variations. And then obviously, you hear all the stories of Cluxton, more or less what I said, the Dublin players just move and I'll find you. But when the town and country were dropping off Cluxton's kickouts, Mark, the one team that probably went after Cluxton was Mayo. They were the ones who were probably the bravest in the country at going after him. Now, this is not Cluxton in his prime, so you're sort of wondering to yourself how much of an influence is, are they going to put a massive interest or influence, in going after him early and going after him high and hard? Because you have the likes of Stephen Cohen and Damer O'Connor and around the middle there who can physically compete. Now it's probably not Brian Fenton's probably not playing the football he was playing, Mark, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Like, so you're thinking to yourself, like, if they go after him early and go after him hard, could they get joy off this kick out?
Look, they probably couldn't. I would say, look, Stephen Rochford is now involved in Kevin McStay's management team, and to be fair, they really, as you said, went after Cluxton's kickouts. Look, there's no doubt Mayo will go after him, but from what I have seen of Mayo this year, and even thinking back to the Kerry game, Kerry went and played man-to-man on them. It was wide Kerry. You never seen Kerry as open ever. Went and played man-to-man, and it suited Mayo just because of serious athleticism and pace run into. Yeah. And whereas they've really struggled with Cork, Louth, and I just think Dublin will clog that space. And yes, we're talking about the kickouts, but Mayo, I think Mayo will go hard after Dublin's kickouts. But it wouldn't surprise me if Dublin bring, and I've seen them doing this in the league 2 or 3 times. I watched them against Kildare in the league. Now, Cluxton wasn't playing this. Again, Kildare, he didn't play against Kildare. On their own kick, at times they had 13 men behind the ball. Yeah. But what they actually wanted to do, they wanted to suck people in, because then if they won the break ball, you were never catching. Yeah. So, and I remember even that day, Clare played the McPro Park, even though like in the last couple of minutes when we went a massive press and a kick out, because it was a draw, getting the ball broke, and Jack McCaffrey and these boys, Lee Gannon, just bullets. And it was serious pace. So it'll just be interesting to see, even Mayo will go hard on the kick out. And it's that risk reward. Don't be surprised if you see Dublin with 13 men inside their 50 in their own kick out. Yeah. And it's nearly waiting. And I'll just be interested to see what way Mayo play that. Do they take the real risk and say, well, we're going to go in, we'll go, or else do we lose? If they don't win the ball, you know yourself, you'd rather be like a chasing's the worst thing you can do against Dublin. And it's serious pace, but there's so many wee tactical things as you're looking at the kickouts, what way Dublin will set up, what way Mayo will set up, even who's going to start in 15. But the kickouts will be a massive factor, and they are a massive factor. But it's one thing, to be fair, yes, they go after the kickouts, but Mayo are very poor in their own kickout at the minute. Breaking ball, they've been very, very poor. And I would say that's something they'll work on this week. But you know yourself, it's very hard to fix something like that in the week. But I'm a great believer in, people say about break ball. Like, I think break ball comes down to two words: pure want. And that's just that heart desire, pure want. If you want the break, you'll get it. So look, there's no, it'll just be that battle will be massive. But I would say Stephen Rochford will have a big influence on the Mayo setup this year, or for this Saturday's game. Or Sunday, sorry.
Just quickly, suppose from matchup perspective, obviously Mayo have lost Toshi Mullen there to the compromise, to the Australian rules. Obviously a huge loss to them defensively. They brought in the likes of Sam Killian, David McBrien, Jack Quine this year. Like Paddy Durkin, he's been favoured in a matchup role in the past. So like you're still looking at a Dublin full forward line, Daniel, of Paddy Small, Con and Kilkenny, with Mannion to come in there, as a possible substitute, or maybe he could start, possibly as well. Like, but it's still a decent full forward line. Daniel, how do you see that? How do you see Mayo coping with that Dublin full forward line?
Yeah, I tell you, I wouldn't be surprised to see Enda Hessian starting as well. I think he did well when he came in. I think McStay might go back to some of his older rivals a little bit. I say McBrien will probably go on Con. I think that's going to be a really interesting battle with that one, because Con is probably like he I think we saw last year, when especially in the Kerry Dublin game, Clifford played, Con didn't, and Clifford ultimately was the difference, and I think Con playing or not playing is the difference between Dublin actually working or not working. He's the fulcrum. When he's not there, they don't really operate as fluently, so I'd imagine that'll be a matchup that'll take place. I'd say Paddy Durkin, you could be looking at possibly Kilkenny. I think you're probably limiting him just to a man marking role. I used to feel the same about Lee Keegan. If you're getting Lee Keegan standing on the wing marking Diarmuid Connolly, you weren't getting the best out of Keegan. But and it's similarly with Paddy Durkin. You kind of want him on the front foot, like you saw in the second half in Galway. Kicked two monster scores. So it'll be I think that McBrien and Conor Callan one, that could be the winning or losing of it for Mayo. I think if McBrien can get on top of Con, I think that is a huge bonus, because Paddy Small is a nice bit of trickery about him, all the rest of it. Kilkenny is, exactly what you're going to get from him. Mannion could be the outlier, but I don't think he's probably where he was a couple of years ago either. I think that is the key matchup for this whole thing. And the other area I would say, and we kind of alluded to it previously, like I think if Dublin give up kickouts to Mayo, I think that's a massive win for Mayo, because at the moment, outside of O'Shea, where are your big target men midfielders? Where are you going to be winning primary ball? Like Jack Carney's been doing a bit of it. Jordan Flynn, but again, they're not your kind of traditional 6'4", 6'5" midfielder. So I think that's going to be the O'Callaghan and McBrien one is massive. And then I know we keep going back to it, but what happens on the kickouts? Because I think Mayo will struggle midfield if it's more of a traditional long kickout game.
Yeah. I'd be surprised if Dublin don't go after them. Put you on the spot then quickly, Dory. Dublin or Mayo? You think Dublin are one of the main contenders, don't you?
Yes, I do. I just think, look, they were a kick of a ball away from Kerry last year. Con didn't play. I do think they're stronger. They have a stronger panel this year, depth wise. Now the only thing would worry me is they haven't really been tested this year. That's the only thing. But look, I would still think Dublin. You have to remember. Mayo scoring 110. Mayo haven't been scoring big. Dublin, I just think Dublin just will have a wee bit too much. Yeah, Daniel.
I'm hoping Dublin win, because if they do, our last two league games are cancelled and we've an injury list the length of my arm. So I'm praying to God to win. But
very good.
There's a tiny little part of me that thinks Mayo could slip it, just because of Dublin's lack of any kind of a test this year. I think Dublin will go hammer and tongs early doors, but if Mayo can last that pace, I think so.
Thanks very much, lads. Quickly on to Derry and Cork, Mark, two teams you're obviously very familiar with. You're also coaching in Derry this year, obviously with Slaughtneil. And you obviously have a number of players that are obviously in the panel, but you come up against both these teams this year. Kevin Walsh in with Cork. Maybe no coincidence now that the two Connacht teams that they met in consecutive weeks, Mayo and Roscommon, who finished first in Division 1 and third in Division 1. Cork were able to grind out, really, really impressive wins. Stephen Sherlock was probably the star of both those wins, Mark. I'm not sure if he played against us in the National League or not, but 5 points at the weekend there as well, like against Roscommon, who would have come into the game obviously fancying them their chances. But what impressed me, Mark, about Cork was Derry. I'm not saying Roscommon are very like Derry, but Davy Burke is very much like most coaches now. You know, it's a lot of process driven football. The way Roscommon were playing, slow, methodical, structured attacks, strike runners coming, dummy runners coming. You know, they were sending the likes of Stevie Murray into full forward to try and sort of maybe create a bit of space for the likes of Big Enda to run at teams and stuff. So I'm sort of looking at this game thinking one of the most impressive aspects of Cork was the way they got after the Roscommon kick out. You know, now that's okay going after the Roscommon kick out. Obviously, Colin O'Callaghan and Ian Maguire are two fine midfielders, particularly Ian Maguire, but they're up against two different animals this week with Conor Glass and Brendan Rodgers, who you could perceivably argue, Mark, maybe one of the most impressive midfield parents in Ireland. So how do you see tactically this game going by?
I think, look, Mayo probably have been the one team that's improved most over the last Cork, the team that's improved most over the last 7 or 8 weeks. The one thing I'll say again is going to say, I do think Cork really struggle to break down a real rugged, structured defensive system. And I do believe Derry will strangle the life out of them this week because there's no bet from seeing Derry. I think they're the best defensive set-up team. I know Clare played them twice, and I've seen them another twice. They're the hardest team to break down. I've seen them. They just get so many bodies behind the ball. But it's not only like people sometimes it's lazy Jerusalem or lazy comment. Oh, Derry's very defensive minded. It's 15 players behind the ball, but every player knows exactly where I'm going. If you watch 5 of Derry's games, you pick Shane McGuigan will always be in the same spot. Conor Glass will be in the same spot. It seems to be a zonal, but they just know each other where they're going. And if one man misses, it has to go somewhere, another man drops in. It's just like telepathic, and it's a serious coaching being done with them. And to be fair, since the Rory thing and Ulster final, they've recovered well from it. And I do think Cork will really, really struggle to break that down, because I know from playing it that was Cork loved that game. Again, the flow and the serious athleticism, Ian Maguire, and then the W. Sherlock, the Pout, or the Matty Taylor. Them boys love space to run into. Now, I watched the Roscommon game last week, and to be fair, Roscommon probably should have been out of sight first 20 minutes. And Roscommon maybe kicked themselves, missed a lot. Probably should have the game over, but to be fair, Cork were the most impressive team I've seen pressing the kick out. I think in 6 of the first kickouts in the second half, they took 3 points out of them. And like they really went after their Roscommon kick out, and they have that big, like they have big men. I know Rory Dean went off injured, but I think he's going to be okay. They have 5 or 6 by 6'5" that can win their own ball. But I just have this feeling I just think Cork will really struggle to break that defensive shape down. And look, if you're playing against Cork, I know there were 2 things people thought be Sherlock and Hurley. I love it. Like Brian Hurley didn't take in Roscommon. I don't know if he'd be fit, but yes, Sherlock and Hurley do the scoring. But I'm telling you, 2 men that set serious, like Matty Taylor and Sean Powter, do serious damage. And I have no doubt Derry will man mark them 2 boys. I'd be shocked, because I'm just, the amount of analysis teams do and watch. I would say Derry will. Yes, but the one thing I'll just be able to see how Cork are they able to break Derry down, because look, what you're going to get with Derry. Derry's going to let them have the ball. They'll press some kickouts, they'll drop off, and Derry's happy to let you have the ball, and Derry will go back to the 45 and say, well, there you go, break us down. And it's okay, but it's just they're so good defensively. But also the one thing Derry have brought different from last year. If you think last year again Galway, they were caught out, were Galway, Mirror, Emmonston. Derry weren't actually that good offensively, and I think that's one thing. They're the highest scorers in Ireland at the minute. If you go through McKenna Cup, National League, and all their championship games, there's one thing they have really, really brought to their game this year is offensively. They're so good, and there's so many. Everybody talks about Shane McGuigan. Yes, he's scoring, but they've so many scores coming from all over the place. And I'll just be interested to see how Cork deal with that hard running, because there's one thing with Derry, when they get the ball, it's serious hard runs. There's no mucking about with the ball. If they suck you in, turn you over, it's hard runs going through the lanes. And it's another thing, I think Owen Lynch will have a massive game this week, because I know from playing again there, even a few weeks ago in Longford, where we had Clare 14 men behind the ball, and that was our goalie. Everybody was manned up, and next thing Owen Lynch comes up to 45, and everybody's manned up in a man, and everybody's going. And I remember saying to Clare player at half time, you need it. I says, I can't go, because even you can't defend 14 against 15, and Derry's the one team who very rarely give the ball away. if
Yeah.
you look, they very rarely look after the ball. It's not like, oh, we'll turn them over. So I think Cork, it's a massive challenge this for Cork, because
Yeah.
it's what they do when Derry push everybody inside the 45. It's what Cork do. Because Cork's going to, who are they going to look? Because Owen Lynch has proved now, he's kicking 2 and 3 points every game now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a big, there's so much happening. Look, it'll be a big test for Cork, but like, to be fair to Cork, they've made a massive recovery since they lost to Clare in the Munster. They really have and to be fair, they played actually very good football. But look, like Brian Hurley would be a serious boost for Cork if he starts. Now, he didn't start, and then when he doesn't start, it's nearly like, right, if we can keep Sherlock, if we can keep that, if you look through all Cork scores, if you in round that arch, they do struggle to score if you close it up, bar Sherlock. So I have no doubt Derry will do a real defensive, and Derry don't care how they win the game as long as they win it. And I'll just want to see how Cork doing that. But I think Cork have a lot to do. Again, Derry just, I think, are sitting ready. They're primed.
Daniel, just Mark talking about Owen Lynch there, the influence he's had. Like, you know, obviously Cork unquestionably at some stage will try and press Derry. As systematic as Derry are, Daniel, probably the most systematic team in the country, probably one of the best organised teams in the country defensively and offensively. They're also one of the best exploiters of the 1v1 situations. They showed that in numerous games this year as well. There have a lot of players who what I would call nearly their explosive agility up front is phenomenal. Their ability to drive and change direction and plant and go, and you know, particularly the likes of Ethan Doherty, and you know, Paul Cassidy's having a brilliant season as well at centre half forward. But Daniel, there'll be no surprises from Derry this weekend. They're using a very, very small squad. That's probably a huge advantage for them as well, knowing more or less what their strongest 15 are and who the 3 or 4 coming in is, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the lead up is going to be nice for Derry. I think last year after winning Ulster, there was a massive boom afterwards, you know, and you were playing a couple of weeks later, and it was kind of hard to keep a lid in the hype. But I think that the 3 group stage games it's business as usual, nice and calm. And the Clare game, the last game, it obviously was nothing too mental. They got over the line, but there's been no real talk about them. And I agree with you. It's interesting, like that. So many teams are coached now to not go to contact, to work around the cordon, to not to go at a weak shoulder. But Derry are really good at lining you up, getting an overload, maybe a 2v3 or something like that, and going at a gap. You know, they are really, really explosive. And as Mark alluded to, like the pace they have in counterattack is sensational. Like it really is. And I often joke with you about the student and the student teacher and the regular teacher, you know, the kids will always tell which is which. But I think at the moment Cork are probably the student teacher. They're on the first stage of the development, you know, whereas Derry are the teacher. They know what they're about, and they are. I think they're going to cause a massive shock at some stage this year. I'd have a little inkling that they could upset a few teams, you know, as we get down to the latter stages, and it'll be. You know, we talked about, you know, your defensive structure. Derry's attacking structure is excellent. It's really, really good. And as both of you probably know, trying to coach attacking structure is probably the hardest thing to do, you know, to try and get that organization, you know. And you're looking at, let's say, we've talked about this a good bit, Stevie, kind of off air, as the boys say, but you know, you look at the some of the top teams at the moment. What differentiates them? It's just naturally really good inside forwards who on their own can be really good. So Clifford for Kerry, Con, as we were saying, the McCurrys, the Canavans, these fellas are just naturally really good forwards. But what I think Derry have slightly differently is that as a unit, they're an extremely well coached forward unit and how to break down defenses. And I think that's a massive tool, because you can see that individual forwards, even one forward, 2 forwards, can be marked out of a game. Like, I know we're going to talk about Kerry and Tyrone in a while, but like you see what Kerry are going to do or what Tyrone are going to do to that Kerry forward line. Like you have to have an organisation outside of individual skill. I think probably Cork are still at that stage where your inside forwards, your Sherlocks, your Hurleys, these sort of fellas are still relying on them just being good footballers rather than a whole process that's around them, you know. So that'll probably be the next stage of development for Kevin Walsh, I'd say. But answer a short question in a long way. But I think Derry are on a really nice path at the moment, and I'd say they'll win handy enough.
And Daniel, it's probably fair to ask you this question than Mark, because obviously Mark's coaching him this year. Like, but Shane McGuigan, like, does he get the respect that he deserves to get? Like, for me, Shane McGuigan now is one of the top forwards in Ireland. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Do you know what's funny? I nearly think he works too hard at times for an inside forward. Now that might sound counterintuitive, but like you see him so often in the transition back in his own 45 doing dog work. Like, I mean, even you go back to that Ulster final and he winning the kickouts in the last couple of minutes out 70 meters from goal. Like, it's a fantastic trait to have. But I think he is absolutely top class. But I think the closer Derry can keep him, kind of reserve that energy for him being creative and for getting on as much ball as they can in opposition half, the better. But he's top drawer. He really is. He's top drawer. Yeah. And I kind of refer back to the whole system that's around him. If he gets nullified, it's not the end of the world for Derry, because there's a whole system to kind of cushion that blow, you know.
Yeah. And Mark, you're gonna go, before we move on to Armagh Monaghan, you're gonna go Derry to win comfortably.
Yeah, Derry. There's a crave of the waste up there. Derry minors are now in the Ulster Ireland final. Derry under 20s. It's a county that's buzzing now, and I just think the Derry seniors now, they're in a good place, and I think it's a very good draw for them. And I think Derry, Derry 4 or 5 points.
And Daniel, you're the same.
Yeah, same as, and I actually saw that game, the Dublin and Derry minor. That Derry minor team are fantastically coached. It's like watching their senior team. You know, I'd say that's flowing through every development squad, the same style of play. Like, so as Mark said, there is a crest of the wave, and they're all singing off the same hymn sheet. You know, so Derry for me in here.
And that's important when you are in a crest of the wave. The rising tide lifts all boats. It's important to obviously keep it going. Monaghan Armagh, boys. Doran played against Monaghan in the group stages. You were wild and lucky. I think it was only maybe the last 5 or 6 minutes Monaghan tagged on a couple of late scores. Is that right?
Yeah. Look, to be fair, we actually probably could have won the game, didn't. But I think, look, Monaghan's without saying Monaghan people are probably going to be giving that, but they're very lucky. I think they're lucky at the minute to be at this stage.
Yeah.
They were now, to be fair, against Kildare, probably slipped up Kildare. I know Glenn Ryan was giving out with the referee, but it wasn't the referee that beat Kildare. Kildare 2 or 3 goal chances. They had to took them. The game was over. Now, the only thing Monaghan, it's probably the draw Monaghan would have won it. Like, if Monaghan could have hand-picked it, they'd have picked Armagh. And they make no mistake. And plus, Monaghan, they're probably sitting thinking, we're here, we're in the quarterfinals, and we haven't played well. I seen them again Derry in Celtic Park, and to be fair, I thought they were outstanding. I thought they were brilliant that day, but they had 3 weeks to sit and wait in Derry. I thought tactically they were brilliant. They mirror imaged them or Derry, but they mirror imaged them right on the money. There was nothing left a chance. Plus, they changed their team to suit Derry to go with pace. And I thought that night watching Monaghan, it was as good as I seen Monaghan play in 2 or 3 years. Now, again, Clare, I thought they were. Clare should have beat them. And Clonus that day, I thought Clare should have beat them, but look, shoulda, coulda, didn't. Monaghan won the game. It's a great sign. They're playing poorly and winning. Now, it was a big surprise them getting beat by Donegal. And it shows their resilience. There's one thing about Monaghan, and the one county in the whole of Ireland, every one of their players will go to the wall for you, no matter what. And that's the one thing. And look, make no mistake, they'll be sitting right. We're in a quarter final. We played very poorly. So, and they're playing Armagh. Look, but it would take Monaghan to really, really improve. They're not playing well as last 2 or 3 weeks. And it's not just you can flick that wee button and all of a sudden you can play well. And I'll just wait to see what team Vinny puts out, because I know in Monaghan, again, Derry, they dropped a few of the older guys and brought pace in. And look, there's one thing about Armagh and Croke Park. Armagh are an athletic team.
They are,
And the pace. And it'll just be interesting to see now what way Vinny puts his team out. And to be fair, look, Vinny Corey probably hasn't got the respect. I don't think he's got the credit he deserves. When you think Monaghan, probably it was one team everybody thought going to get relegated, and now he has kept them up, but he's also in them in that Iron quarterfinals now. But it will take Monaghan to really, really improve to give Armagh a game. But I do think it'll depend on the Monaghan team. Just be interested to see what team he was out. But look, make no mistake, Monaghan will look at this game and think this is very winnable. And if somebody had said to Vinny Corey at the start of the year, you'll keep Monaghan up and you'll get into an Ireland semi-final, I think they wouldn't have thought that in his wildest dreams. And they're only 70, 75, 76 minutes now away from that. But the only thing Armagh, I think, again, it's like that. This is a team again sitting waiting. I think any of them teams coming off last week a win will be doing really, really well to win the game. As a team, I've just seen it this year in my own, when Clare got to Munster final and we were playing week in, week out, and next thing Donegal were sitting 3 or 4 weeks, bang. If you look at Kerry, 3 or 4 weeks, or Kerry were playing constant, next thing Mayo were just sitting waiting. I think that week is going to be massive for a lot of teams. And look, there's no doubt Armagh have been sitting in Monaghan up. Right, look, we have a week prepared. Whereas Monaghan last Saturday, everything's in hay after the Miners winning there and then winning in Tullamore. But the only thing, it'd been very easy for Vinnie Curry this week because he'd be able to really, like Monaghan, in my eyes, went in or got into the game in perfect situation because they were poor. They were very, very poor against Kildare and probably should have been beat. So Vinnie will have no problem focusing them, getting them ready, but it will take a massive improvement from Monaghan from their last two displays.
Yeah, and Daniel, there's no saying the old dog for the hard road, and Monaghan certainly have experience. Like even the likes of McCarthy there, like, you know, Conor McCarthy and Carl O'Connell have obviously been a revelation at 5 and 7, especially the move of McCarthy. For me, I called it there actually like a month ago. I thought that Conor McCarthy playing wing back was a really, really hugely influence for them. But Michael Bannigan has appeared, you know, this year. I seen him playing against Down in January in the McKenna Cup. Could see very, very clearly a brilliant footballer. But, you know, the likes of Darren Hughes, Desi Ward, you know, McManus came off the bench in the last few games. The Wileys, you've coached them yourself, Mark, as well. Won the championship with Ballybay. Kieran Hughes, like a huge experience there, Daniel. You know, and how much will that experience count on Saturday?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like they were really poor against Kildare. You know, I thought they looked a bit heavy-legged, looked a bit lethargic. Now, in saying that, Kildare planted all 15 inside the 45, and you know there probably wasn't a whole heap of space for Monaghan to be going into. But yeah, firstly, I think Vinnie Corey's done incredibly well to be where he is. To be perfectly honest, like, I mean, for how long has McManus been carrying the can for scores for them for over the last couple of years? And realistically, he hasn't really made much of a dent this year at all. I think Stephen O'Hanlon's been really good. I thought he looked like a really bright spark last Sunday. I thought he was sharp. You know what? If there was ever a team to cause Armagh a few issues, it could be Monaghan. They're like Armagh and Monaghan are fairly known quantity for each other. And I like if you were saying that Monaghan came up against Kerry this weekend, I'd be a lot more worried for Monaghan, to be honest with you. But I think that the bit of dog in them, as you say, they're a gnarly, grizzled sort of team. I think they'll have to keep it from looking too pretty. I'd imagine, you know, it can't be if they get caught into kind of a running match where it's a transition game up and down the field. I think that won't be ideal for them. I think if they can put it into kind of a set piece style game, and it's, you know, it's relatively structured, I think Armagh will struggle with that a small bit. I still think Armagh probably have a bit of a kick in them yet as well, though. So I'd be concerned that if they get a run on Monaghan, I'm not sure the legs might be there. And especially coming off the bench, I'm not sure that they're there for Monaghan. But look, you write them off at your pearl. Like, I mean, as you said, like how many times have they got out of relegation trouble in Division 1? I was, you know, I wouldn't completely write them off yet, but I'd say Armagh will kind of be, while they'll be slightly nervous about it, I think they'd fancy it, and especially in Croke Park. I know everyone says the pitch is the same size, but it is a team for speed, or it is a pitch for speed, you know.
Yeah, and only Armagh played quite well in Croke Park in the last couple of years. They got a brilliant performance there last year against Dublin in the National League 2022. Obviously, last year they were very unlucky in the quarter-final, lose to penalties to Galway. Rian O'Neill is obviously coming back into the team this week, Mark. Huge addition for them. To go to Carrick and Shannon and beat Galway was, I felt, Mark, for me, was, you know, a very, very significant point in McGeeney's journey with this group. You know, Rory Grugan was excellent that day, you know, kicked 4 points, including the match winning free. Conor Turbot from Clanern is a brilliant footballer, very explosive. You have Andrew Murnion back as well, Dorney, a handful. You know, obviously Falker's popped up with a point, Stefan Calmage. Like the spread of scores, I think that 6 or 7 scores the last day out, and that was without Rian O'Neill. And I don't think too many give them much of a chance to get into the Galway game. You would have Armagh in on Sunday, obviously, boss, as favourites, would you? Yeah,
to be fair, I agree with you. I thought the Armagh beating Galway down in Kerry was a massive result for McGeeney. And to be fair to them, look, they were probably under a wee bit of pressure. McGeeney was probably under pressure of getting relegated this year. But you think they were very, very unlucky. They should have beat Kerry. They've lost 2 or 3 games. But I thought the Galway game was a massive win for them. And look, when you look at the Armagh team, there's height, there's serious pace, there's athletic. They seem to, I think McGeeney has built a really, really strong squad of players. Yeah. And I'm not saying they'll win the Iron, but I do think they're one team that will take an awful lot of beating. And to be fair, look, I'm making no mistake, they probably blew the Ulster final that day. They went 2 up And
Yeah.
we're talking about that press and kick out. And when they went 2 up, you're saying press and kick out, and they give Derry the kick out. And next thing Derry get the next 2 scores, where I'm a great believer in.
Yeah.
Go and make everything a battle. And I would say Armagh have learned from that. And I thought, look, to be fair, they were flat again. Westmeath could have been caught again. Westmeath, but that was to be expected after coming after the Ulster final. But I think from that game, they've got really, really improved. And that Galway game was a massive win for them. And then they go and tap the group. And I think, look, Armagh players, and Daniel made a suggestion there. If this game was played in Tullamore or Portlaoise, I would be giving Monaghan a massive chance. But just because of the local derby, and the one thing with Monaghan, they're down. But the fact it's in Croke Park, Armagh's like Charlie Oak coming and they've just the pace all over the field. Charlie Oak, they've Rain, they've Connor. You mentioned Andy Murnion, the pace all over the field.
And Mark, you also talked about Oren Lynch's influence. Ethan Rafferty.
Yeah, Ethan Rafferty
is like an extra man in Croke Park.
But that's to be fair, that would actually be brilliant to watch Ethan Rafferty and Rory Beggan. Yeah. Like even there last week watching Sean Patton and Niall Morgan, it was just brilliant sitting on TV just watching these 2 keepers. Like it's a long time since 10 years ago it was unheard of where the biggest bat in the field was between the 2 keepers. I thought last week Niall Morgan and Patton was brilliant. Yeah. Can't wait to see Ethan Rafferty and Rory Beggan this week. Now, Ethan Rafferty obviously a wee bit more comfortable on the ball than Rory. And Ethan Rafferty, I would say, will love the fact playing at Croke Park. But I think Armagh, to be fair to McGeeney and even Kieran McKeever and Donny, they've created they've a really good squad there.
They have, yeah.
There's one team that can, I think, like people give out, they don't play to their strengths. Sometimes they bring Rian O'Neill out round the middle, but that's okay. They've Andy Murnion and they've Conor Turbot. Yeah. And then sometimes I just like they can vary it, they mix it up. I think it's brilliant. They're not predictable. You couldn't say from one week to the next what way Armagh's going to play. And I actually love that about them. Where I thought I thought for 3 or 4 years Armagh were so predictable. Now I think they've got away from that predicament, and you just don't know what you're going. Are they going to play a running game? Are they going to play a kicking game? Are they going to sit tight?
I was just going to say that, obviously they're really well organised defensively. It's an area of concern I have. Their full back line, the last day it was Paddy Burns, Kieran Higgins, Ian Fogger. It could be a line that could struggle, in the latter stage of the championship, maybe against a better forward line that they're coming up against this week. But certainly, Dorney, from Armagh's perspective, the ability to be able to kick the ball is a huge advantage getting into Croke Park, because if you're one-dimensional and you're running the ball, it's harder, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's hard, and it's one thing I just think they've got so good at it last couple of years. They really have mixed their play up. They can run it, they can play a running game, and they play a kicking game, and they mix it up. Now they're actually I hate saying this is a down man, but Armagh's actually very good to watch at the minute. And they are good to watch.
Jesus, Dorney, for fuck's sake, we scored 8 goals last week. What more do you want, boy? You can't. You see, this is the problem, Daniel. You can't please these down supporters, but
I'm very happy 8 goals. I'm delighted. But Armagh they've got very good to watch, easy on the eye. But look, and to be fair, as I said, it will take Monaghan now. If Monaghan come with the same sort of game plan and energy they brought to Celtic Park that night, I would give Monaghan a mark, because I thought tactically that night Monaghan were absolutely outstanding.
Call it there. Who are you going for?
Armagh.
Daniel?
If Armagh don't get caught up in trying to out macho Monaghan and they just play a bit of ball, I think Armagh will win as well.
Yeah. Lads, finally, tasty. Kerry, Tyrone. Daniel, I'm going to start with you because you love this Tyrone and the cause. But talk to us about the cause. Talk to us about the cause.
I tell you what, I was looking. Do you remember the score Conn Kilpatrick got there last weekend, where he burst through about 7 lads and he turned around? He was just looking for someone to hit. He was looking for someone to hop off. Do you know what? Tyrone are dangerous when they're like that. And I think they alluded to it in the Sunday game when they have that bite. And I think Tomas O'Shea called it nastiness. They have a real fucking bit of nastiness about them at the moment. And I think Kerry are such a known quantity for Tyrone. When Tyrone bet them a couple of years ago, like whatever year, I can't even remember what years, but when they bet them in Croke Park, that's practically the same Kerry team, more or less, that was there then. And you're looking at the Tyrone team now. It's a whole new. It's practically a whole new forward line. It's an unknown quantity for them, and I think Tyrone have a massive advantage midfield. I think Kerry's midfield is not saying they're bad footballers, but they're not Kennedy and Kilpatrick. They're not these massive ballers who are all action, 6'5" apiece, get up and down the field. I like what Tyrone are doing. They're dropping in a midfielder every so often for a long ball option. They're the two Canavans, McCurry, just floating around there. Like they're just a tonic to watch. Like I can't wait to see them in Croke Park. I mean, they go and take chances. Probably a lot of inside forward play has been coached out of lads these days, but these boys are pure corner forwards. You know, they're absolutely top class. I think if Tyrone can limit Clifford to single figures, I genuinely think they could stifle the rest of the Kerry team. I think Tyrone are a really dangerous animal. And do you know what? There's part of you would wonder, like, will Kerry come out and try and mirror Tyrone? Will they come out and try and play defensively? Because at the moment, I don't see any major pattern. I don't think it's Kerry's natural thing to do. Like the Tig Morley sweeper as a 1-man +1. Again, that doesn't really work if Tyrone or if Kerry are going to go man to man everywhere else, because Tyrone will pick you apart. So it's going to be a really interesting battle. But I just love where Tyrone are at the moment. If they have these lapses within games for maybe 15-20 minutes where they just seem to switch off. They get the job done for a while and then they kind of float around for a little bit. If they can really go after Kerry, and I think they will. I think there's a thing there with Tyrone and Kerry. I mean, you look at even Jack O'Connor and Mickey Hart there last week, the loud Kerry game. Kerry went after Loud like no team has, and that was purely a Mickey Hart factor. There's an element of that is still in Kerry that we want to show these Tyrone lads, because I think anytime a big days came in Croke Park, I go back to 03 and the puke football statement and all of that sort of stuff. I think that lingers in Kerry a little bit, and it lingers a lot more in Kerry than it does in Tyrone, you know. So look, I'm going to call a big one. I think Tyrone.
Yeah, and look, they haven't beaten Tyrone really in a really significant game in Croke Park, you know, in a long time. And obviously, Daniel touched on it. Meyler, McGeary, Canavan, McCurry, Donnelly, Canavan. They bar Matty Donnelly there. There's pace in that forward line, Mark. Like there's plenty of pace in it. But I suppose the one secret weapon maybe that Kerry have won't be on the field on Sunday, but certainly on Saturday. But certainly Paddy Tally's influence behind the scenes. He will obviously know this Tyrone side, Mark, you know, very, very well from obviously, you know, being from Tyrone, but having obviously coached a lot of these lads at St. Mary's as well. Like what's your view on it? Do you agree with Daniel there?
No, look, there's no doubt Tyrone love the fact they're playing Kerry, and make no mistake. But look, to be fair, it depends what Tyrone team turn up, because Tyrone they're probably the most inconsistent team in Ireland at the minute. You think, like again, Westmeath, John Hitt, they were a whiff of a post for me, knocked out. Now maybe that gave them a wee kickstart. They were very good again, Donegal. I wouldn't say they were brilliant. They were very good. Now, funny enough, I went and watched Tyrone and Kerry this year in Oklahoma on a Sunday in a league game, and before after 20 minutes, Kerry were 7 or 8 points up. And something just whatever flick. Marty McNally was refereeing, and I never forget. Brian Dooher, something happened. Somebody was down, and Brian Dooher went out, was given out. And next thing, whatever happened, whatever was said, Marty McNally started letting stuff go a wee bit, and Tyrone just loved it. And with the intensity that Tyrone brought, Tyrone ended up now. Kerry had nothing to play for in the league. It was their second. Well, they were more or less safe, but Tyrone were fighting for their lives. But Tyrone came out the second half and just went into, like, cut into Kerry, went after them and everything. Now, I know Murphy made a bad mistake with Kerry goal, and Tyrone won the game by 2 or 3 points. But I remember Jack O'Connor specifically watched him along the line that day. The last 20 minutes, he was so agitated. He was giving after linesmen, fourth officials. It was really grinding on him.
Yeah,
Tyrone were actually bullying them.
And
on
Saturday, Brendan Cawley's down to referee the game. Like, that's obviously going to have an influence on it as well. You talked about how McNally let it flow and how he let Tyrone get in around them. Like, Brendan Cawley refereed that Cork Roscommon game, and he let an awful lot go by. An awful lot. Yeah,
no, he let, and look, and that made Tyrone pay. There's no doubt Ronnie McNabb and these boys will be sitting and Matty Donnelly and Frank Burns and Meyler and going, Hampsey, we're going to get into these. This is just great. There's probably the foam's dripping at the mouth when the referee was announced it. And to be fair, Cawley lets it go that way. But look, Tyrone, yes, serious pay. And I love the way now they've actually able to mix it up. Daniel mentioned it, like years ago it was Tyrone wee men, and now they've mixed it up. Kilpatrick or Kennedy goes full forward, they do hoof that ball in. But look, McCurry, and to be fair, when you look at Darrell Cameron, he's actually brilliant to watch. But when's the last time you've seen a top class? Every time you look at, he's a smile on his face as if he just, I love being out here, give me the ball. Now, I would say there was a few words said in the Calvin household the other day, because I'm thinking the first half, he should have slipped the ball. He should have kicked the ball to Rory. Rory was clean through and he shot. But look, when you look at that forward, like you mentioned the names, like on paper, Tyrone, like they've serious players. But for some reason, since they won that Ireland, they just haven't been the same. Now, I'm going to be really devil's advocate. I don't care. They wouldn't have beat Kerry in that Ireland semi-final that year. The one that Ireland only did for Clifford. Remember, he went off. Clifford went off with cramp because he just really struggled. Now, you mentioned Paddy. I remember talking to him 4 or 5 weeks ago, and he just said, "Oh, I don't want to bump into Tyrone." Well, unfortunately, now he's got Tyrone. That no doubt be a massive influence. But I think, look, Kerry took serious learning from the Mayo game where they went real man to man, and I think you'll see a real different Kerry this time. And I still think when we mentioned all them Tyrone players, look, I'm all right with David Clifford, but Paddy Clifford's no slouch. Shawnee O'Shea's no slouch. Gavin White, I remember seeing him in the Munster final. I've never been impressed with somebody as much, just the pace he has. Tom O'Sullivan. I think Kerry, that league game, no doubt Jack O'Connor would have been this week driving at home how they were bullied and they were this and they were that. They were serious. And plus that Ireland semi-final, even though it was a different management, Kerry for different management, they still beat them in an Ireland semi-final that year after extra time. And I do think Kerry I think Kerry will beat them. I think just on their day, I still don't like Tyrone, very inconsistent. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing rails Tyrone more than the Kerry jersey, but I just have a feeling that Kerry will have a wee bit too much for them. And I do think Kerry will have their homework done better this time than they've ever done for playing Tyrone in the championship game.
Just before, it's very interesting insight there when you talk about the pace and the power, you've seen them up close. But what's surely one area, Daniel, is an area of Tyrone. Look at a Con Kilpatrick, you already mentioned. Brian Kennedy, who had a wonderful game the last day against Donegal. That midfield will fancy their chances against Diarmuid O'Connor and Jack By, an area of the field, Daniel, that Kerry have really struggled in since the retirement of David Moore.
Yeah, I think so. And it's, in fairness, they're both teams are kind of well matched up either side of the field. Like, there's going to be some fascinating matchups. I think, I talk about Myler, probably go back and Paddy Clifford, and who will Hamsey pick up, who will McKiernan pick up, Thomas Sullivan. There's a lot of interesting matchups, but I think Tyrone definitely have a little bit of an advantage midfield. If Kerry, like we talk about squeezing kickouts, like who likes anything more than Morgan going over the top of a high press, and it'll be, I think it'll be interesting. I think Tyrone definitely have a better midfield. I think it's going to be a fascinating game. I really do. And you're talking about Brendan Cawley. If Brendan Cawley lets it go, but just has a consistency like he did last week. I think it's going to be an absolute rip roaring game, and but I think there's a definite advantage for Tyrone in midfield. I think there's like other areas of the field there's probably strengths and weaknesses both sides, but I think there's a very clear advantage for Tyrone in the middle of the park.
Yeah, call it there, Daniel. You think Tyrone?
I think Tyrone, for the crack.
Mark, you're going to go Kerry?
Yeah, I'm going to go Kerry. I'm going to go the 4 teams that were sitting waiting.
Yeah, sitting primed. Well, I would love nothing more than Partisan, Ulster, Tyrone, Armagh, Derry, all the semi-final, and then the country just to go into meltdown. That would be the best game to choose for me. But hey, lads, listen, thanks very much, lads. Brilliant insight again. We'll hopefully see the 2 years before the All-Ireland final. We'll get a look at the All-Ireland final in a few weeks. It's hard to believe that the season will be over in a few weeks' time, actually. But look, brilliant insight, lads. Mark, all the best with Slough-Neil. Daniel, all the best since Sylvester's as well. Two very good coaches. It's brilliant to have your knowledge here tonight, lads. So thank you very much, man. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks.